to Mistakes Were Made, a podcast about non-monogamy for messy people like us. I'm Sarah, a queer therapist, writer, and journalist, excited for today's topic.
And I'm her husband, Alex, a communications professional and educator.
And I'm Jessica, podcast producer and resident monogamist.
And today we're talking about a true technological marvel, a wonder of modern life that has changed the way that we live, laugh, and love. We're talking about dating apps.
Boom, boom, boom. Falling off a cliff. Screams.
Run! Godzilla's coming!
Are you looking for me? I'm looking for someone. Where can you be? Someone.
Okay, early to bed, early to rise makes a woman healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's why you're wiser than me. It's Stephen.
Hi, I'm Maurice. I'm an executive by day and a wild man by night.
Hi, my name's Monroe. You've probably already noticed that I have incredibly blue eyes.
Hi, my name is Phil. Most of my friends call me Big Phil.
Okay. I like to talk to people deep into the night.
I play guitar.
I'm Eitan.
Hi, I'm Fred. Hi, my name's Mike, and if you're sitting there watching this tape smoking your cigarette, well, hit the fast forward button, because I don't smoke and I don't like people who do smoke.
I'm not afraid to get sand on my tuxedo if you're not afraid to let the wind mess your hair up a little bit when I take the top down.
Perhaps even a nice bath with some champagne and candles.
Hi, Mom. I do fashion photography, and I do consider myself a refined valley dude.
Okay. I'm looking for a trendy girl with a simple smile. Wait, it says here. Oh, excuse me.
I don't know, what I'm not looking for is some big, overgrown monster that's always thinking about food and...
Whoso binds to himself a joy, doth its winged life destroy.
I like to do a lot of sailing. I like to outdoor activities. I like climbing. I like travel.
I took a sponge ball and was pulling him out of a little girl's ear.
Vivacious, foxy.
I'm looking for the goddess. Are you the goddess? Who is the goddess? The goddess is the woman, is a woman, is any woman, is all women.
Oh my God.
So, Sarah, have you met any of those guys on the apps?
All of them.
Yeah,
Literally
really?
every single one. That's from the 80s.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Uh-huh.
And it's like, other than the sort of like 80s accents or whatever.
Yeah, were those 80s accents?
I guess that's the way people talked the decade that
amazing.
I was born. I'm bringing it back.
I want one of those, yeah.
Yeah, every single one of those guys is on OkCupid right now.
Amazing. Yeah, wow. That's good stuff.
But that's it. That's our podcast, everyone. Yeah. We just wanted to play that clip. Everybody's heads explode.
That's all I have to say.
Mic drop.
I really want to hear some women's profiles from that era, too, but I couldn't find any.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm. I wonder why that is. Oh, although it might be... Well, I don't actually know how this worked. Yeah, but it might be that it was more like men auditioning for a woman to be interested in them than the, like, full...
It was like Bumble.
Stage. Yeah, like Bumble. Video Bumble.
A feminist dating video app. Anyway, yeah, so today we're talking about dating apps, and I guess they haven't been around forever. Before that, there was personal ads and video personal ads, and...
It's nice to know that some things never change, and just the spirit of, I guess, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, just the feeling of the raw humanity on display remains the same, no matter the medium or the decade.
Yes, I like that. That's a more compassionate approach than just laughing at those poor guys who are now...
Who I'm sure all have found love and are... deep in their sunset years enjoying it.
Yes, or in side-by-side burial plots with the people that they fell in love with.
Yeah.
Just to call back to my favorite theme of this podcast.
Coffins.
Death, yeah.
Next time we need to update the logo for the show. Side-by-side burial plots.
Yeah, totally.
Well, as we've been saying, we can take anything that's supposed to be sexy and turn it into something morbid or overly intellectual.
Yeah.
So.
So yeah, weirdly, I mean, like they've been around for a long time, different ways of like meeting people other than meeting them on the street or whatever. But you and I are kind of weirdos in that we only first started experiencing the wonder of online dating in our like early 40s or late 30s, right?
Yep, that's right. I made my first dating profile when I was 40 years old. And what a profile it was.
Well, I mean, I'm curious to ask you guys a little bit about that because, you know, I was on the apps off and on for many years, in my 30s, I guess, maybe also in my late 20s. And, well, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, but maybe we'll get to that later on in the podcast. And I do know, like, I can see now that, like, the experience of kind of vicariously, like, looking over your friend's shoulder while they swipe through on the apps is, like, so fun.
So fun.
We definitely used to do that, like, when I was dating and you guys were just...
I used to beg you to let me do that.
Right. You did. And, I mean, it made it a lot more fun for me, honestly. And you always have great date ideas, if I may say. So thanks for helping me with my dating life. But...
God, I always really imagined that that would be more currency than it actually is in the dating world. I have, like, so many good date ideas.
Like for what to do on a date. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And nobody cares as much as I thought they would.
Nobody cares. Netflix and chill. That's all anybody wants to do.
Very much.
Yeah.
Well, so having been a Tinder co-pilot for many years, what were you kind of expecting when you went on the dating apps? Were you like, I know what's going to happen and it's going to be so fun, finally?
I was so excited.
I know.
Because
honey.
I thought like, because I'd become aware of it as a thing, I guess, in this, you know, in the time that I was in a monogamous relationship, and like it just made you sort of feel like looking over this. I don't think I ever looked over a man's shoulders at dating apps, but I definitely like looked at yours a time or two, Jessica, and it was just like, oh, there's just like so many people out there, and you just get to like choose which one of them you want to make an authentic connection with or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what it felt like.
I think for me, I just thought everything seemed interesting. I mean, that's kind of like, you know, like many, my greatest weakness and my greatest strength, I would say, is that almost anything new just feels super exciting to me. Oh, is that our friends?
Yeah, it's Lulu and Nate.
Oh, they're going to the protest?
Yeah.
Cool.
Just ignore them.
Just
move along now.
All these like cheerful, earnest children going to a political protest.
Yeah.
Keep walking. Anyway, yeah. So as I was saying, I think for me, I just thought it all seemed so interesting, and everyone seemed interesting, and I imagined everyone would think I was interesting, and I was excited maybe for different reasons, but I had always really enjoyed meeting new people.
Yeah.
Under almost any circumstances, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is just like an opportunity to be constantly meeting new people. One of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, I agree. That's how I felt too, and I definitely like had because of that, like I had like kind of a reachy feeling. Like I was just like, if these people can just understand the true essence of me, they'll be interested in me, and then we'll be able to, whatever. It felt like kind of. Not like competitive with other people, but like sort of competitive with myself. And it felt like very hard also, which I'm realizing in retrospect was in part because it was the middle of a global pandemic and everybody was scared of dying of COVID.
Right.
And we were just like, woo, online dating, this is so exciting. And most other people were not in that same place.
Fair enough. Although one thing I will say about that is I think maybe it helped a little bit because you only ended up meeting up with people where there was like some real motivation on either side to make that happen.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It's like, it felt like if you got to the point where you're having one of those like COVID walks in the park, there was some good material there and you already knew it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It took a lot of investment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it wasn't just, you know, people just wouldn't do whatever with somebody that they didn't necessarily care about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone seemed interesting. I thought everyone would think I was interesting. I thought everybody would love my interesting date ideas. That was me in the beginning. For the first 4 weeks.
Yeah. I think I lasted a little longer being excited about it, in part because it was sort of like, I definitely like got, and maybe kind of still have like a sort of addictive, like, you know, like the, like, I got like a dopamine release when I would like see the little notification from the logo of the app or whatever, in a way that's kind of sad, honestly. but I was just like, ooh, an OkCupid notification. Like, I'm so excited. Or like a little Tinder flame. I'm so excited about like what this potentially could be.
Yeah. I think that also has to do with just like how people interact with stuff online. I've always been the type of person that kind of has to talk myself into going onto social media.
Right.
Like, it's always a mixed bag for me. Like, it's as likely to make me feel bad as good.
Yeah. And there's a reason that stuff works, like from a, you know, like whatever design psychology perspective. And it's not just true for dating apps. It's true for like, it's the random reward thing is like a thing that they talk about in, I think, probably in product design and also in psychology, that like, if you don't know when something nice is going to happen, it only has to be a little tiny bit nice and it will like hook you on it.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
really
just like waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, and I think similarly, or my own version of that was every time there was a connection or there was a match or something, I'm like, this is really important. I need to like pursue this and make this happen. And like, you know, this is meaningful.
Right. Right. And it was like not just like, it was almost like sort of like a political statement as well, I feel like, for us early on. Like being non-monogamous felt like a thing that we were doing not just because of, you know, desire or whatever lifestyle, but also like, you know, it was like kind of a revolutionary thing to do or something.
It was transgressive.
Yeah, I don't want to sound too grandiose, but it did, I think it added to that feeling of it being meaningful, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. It felt weird and new and novel and transgressive and a little taboo, and that was part of what made it really exciting.
Yeah, and also sex. Maybe sex was going to happen. So
maybe the
of
sex.
course that makes it exciting. And I want to be clear that the like addiction orientation was totally related to the little app icons and not at all related to actual sex that I was having.
Okay, so that was the very beginning. I'm kind of curious, Jessica, since we have you here and you're speaking to the role of resident monogamist, what was your experience with the apps, or like, you know, kind of early experiences?
Yeah.
Yeah, was it fun for you like that? Was it fun at the beginning ever?
Yeah, it's funny. There are definitely ways that it was fun. Like, I remember when I was first on OkCupid, it was like back before it had been bought by whoever, Match.com or whoever. They are all owned by the same company now. I think we'll get to that later. But I was like really drawn to them because they would like do all of these data analytics and like look at, you know, correlations between, you know, certain questions and their, you know, how good the match was or whatever. And they would like publish blog posts about it. And I found it super interesting. I realized that has like nothing to do with the actual like meeting people and dating. I like really enjoyed that site for other reasons. And notice I'm even calling it a website. This was like browser days before I had a smartphone. But I like... it's
a great website.
Great website.
Do you like websites?
But, you know, I like really enjoyed the sort of like, there were also gamification elements there, right? And I think that was really fun for me. The actual like meeting people and going on dates was like a mixed bag, you know? And I remember my very first literal actual first date from someone I had met online. You know, it was just like, we went to a bar or restaurant or whatever. It was just like very like straightforward. I think we went to the Twilight exit. And
still a classic place to
yeah, but this Twilight exit probably two locations ago.
Two locations ago, I believe. So, you know, and he was like bearded, wearing a flannel shirt, whatever, typical Seattle lumberjack hipster type. And I think everything was fine. It was like a little bit awkward because it's a first date. I went and like looked in the mirror after the date and saw that I had like a huge piece of spinach or something.
Oh my God.
Teeth. And like, I think that we actually hadn't eaten. We had like just drunk. So it definitely was from like before, like the entire time I had something in my teeth. And I was just like, okay, so this is how it's going to go.
Wow. And that was the one that got away.
Yeah.
Did you just like salute him on your way out the front door?
We're just like, I mean, we never talked again, but like, I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to go on another date with someone who wouldn't just like, I know it can be awkward. I know it can sometimes be very hard to tell people there's something in their teeth, but you have to do it.
And sometimes you don't know. Maybe you just think they're missing a tooth. This is turning into a very special episode of Mistakes Were Made about stuff being in people's teeth.
It's like an important piece of etiquette.
Dental hygiene.
I know, but whatever. Anyways, I think it was mutual.
This speaks.
It was mutual between him and the spinach.
Yeah, so I guess like my bubble burst on the first date too. It's like my arc was short because there was like all the potential in the world, all the chemistry of online, all of the interesting people and people who would find me interesting. And then there was the first date and I was like, oh,
yeah,
I'm a dummy.
Yeah.
My bubble burst before I even got to the first date because I like started chatting with a person on a woman on Tinder, and I was just like so excited that like this person was talking to me, but she was monogamous,
right.
And like she was like still kind of down when I like told her that I was non-monogamous, and then I was like super excited, and she like sent me like not even a naked picture, but a picture of like her in her bra or something, and I was like, oh my God, what is this world? It was just like my mind was blown.
Heaven is mine.
Yeah.
Heaven is mine.
And I had like probably a crazy overreaction to it.
You were just like, "Ooh."
Yeah, exactly. But it was an actual gif of my eyes bulging out of my head, and then I remember her being like, "Oh, I'm glad you like it so much." Like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude? And then like she canceled our date. You know, it was like we had a date planned, and then she was like, "I don't think I can do this. I don't want to date a married person." And I was like devastated.
Oh,
yeah, it was so sad.
You're like, but you showed me your bra.
Yeah, right.
How could you do this?
And
to
I
me?
tried to like negotiate. I tried to be like, you know, we don't have to. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Like we'll just like whatever. Like I tried to make it be okay, which is like I would never do
Try
that
and talk
now.
somebody
Like trying
out
to
of that
talk
now.
somebody into something now, but didn't really understand how it worked.
Oh boy.
Anyway.
Yikes.
Huh. So we all were disillusioned fairly quickly.
Yeah.
After going on the apps. I think concluding that it's still people on there, right?
It is still people. It turns out, again, to that statement, the raw humanity.
Yeah. That's true. But I do want to say that like what I said up top about it being a marvel of modern technology or something, I do stand by that statement to the extent that like, I guess for anybody, but maybe especially for non-monogamous people, like just the fact that you can filter the people out there in the world like through, it's like, I feel like it's like really the only good thing that came out of the internet being invented on a long timeline is that like
bold statements
like,
don't help.
I'm saying it. Write in if you can think of anything else good that came out of the internet. I will be very surprised. Like good things happened and then
unhappened,
and then unhappened, and then an insurrection was caused or whatever. But like the fact that you can find people with common interests who like how else do you meet people? How did people meet people before? And there was that statistic in that Aziz Ansari book, Modern Love. He did a bunch of like background sociology research on dating, and it was like about how, like 50 years ago, like it was like 80 or 90% of people married somebody who lived in a 10 block radius or something, because you just met them on the stoop or at the corner store or whatever.
I don't know. I'm like, hit me up on the stoop or at the corner store. I don't know. Like, I understand that, especially for non-monogamous people, the ability to like signal that as your lifestyle orientation, whatever, is super important because it's not the norm. And also, as a queer person, I think the dating apps are really important in that way too. I mean, there's always been gay bars and like queer spaces and stuff like that, but the opportunity to be able to like date people and find the right people is really important. I always think about those weird rumors that, I don't know if they're true or not, about how swingers used to indicate that they were swingers before the dating apps, like pineapples or those weird feather bushes.
Yeah, or like a barn star, apparently, is the thing.
I don't know.
Like a red barn star? Yeah.
So I definitely hear what you're saying.
If you see any of these things outside people's houses, just knock on the door and try to get them to have sex with you. That's
and ask them if
feather
they're
bushes.
DTF.
That's what it means.
They'll love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get that. I also feel like this, I don't know where this factoid comes from, but I've heard it repeated a lot when people are talking about the difference between like arranged marriages and love matches, to use potentially like antiquated language, and which is more successful than the other.
Right.
And it's completely equal.
Right. Yeah.
Like the success of the relationships doesn't really have that much to do with the origin of the relationships.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that like is coming up for me here around the dating apps. There's like, or your mention of like the data potentiality of matching through data on OkCupid, that you could hack this in a way that would improve the quality of your relationships.
Right.
And I'm like,
yeah.
You might have just as good a luck with like the person you meet at the store.
And isn't that, I feel like the cynicism around it is partly born from that like paralysis of choice thing, where you don't, you might meet somebody on the store at the corner store and you don't have 90 other people or like an infinite feed of other people standing in line behind them at the corner store, where you might be like, oh, looking around behind them like, oh, but maybe that other person is better. And so, it just...
They're not.
Yeah, totally. And the data part is interesting too, because it does, I feel like that kind of like, that idea, it's like, especially in monogamy, you only need to meet one person. So like the idea that there would be like this broad swath of data that would allow you to find like exactly the right, perfect people, it's like you're going to just find the one, I guess.
Should we time out for that noise? Is it coming up?
It's not too bad. I can hear it, but I think it's not too bad for the sound quality purposes. Okay. I am worried about the floor downstairs, but was that a drill?
That's a drill.
It was a drill.
That's a drill.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
it sounded
for sure a drill.
The most recent one sounded to me like scooching furniture, and I was like, "Don't move the piano."
I don't think he's moving furniture.
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Should we keep going? What do you think, Al? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So you were saying that in monogamy, you just have to find the one person that is the right person, or you will convince yourself is the right person for long enough to get married.
Right. Yeah. And so you're a passing, like your time in the dating apps will hopefully be short. Oh,
there we go.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It's the sound of pork.
Well, yeah, speaking of pork products.
We were just discussing on our break how we have a lot of really great pork products in our fridge because Grocery Outlet had a sale on bacon and ham steaks this week. So that was great.
Yum.
Less great pork products might be represented by the police helicopter you may be hearing in the background of this protest, or the background of this podcast, because it's MLK Day and there are MLK Day protests and marches and rallies happening right around here that obviously the police need to be surveilling.
From a helicopter?
From a helicopter. These are the protests that literally like our children are at right now, and they're like signing songs about MLK. And yeah, you need a police helicopter for that. And also all of the cops that drove by on motorcycles too, apparently.
Sarah, we don't want to offend our listener base in law enforcement, okay? So there are many open-minded police officers experimenting with non-monogamy right now. And
well,
we want them to feel
May I just say that I hope they're experimentation with non-monogamy is a direct path to quit your job.
Yeah.
Didn't you go on a date with a cop?
A former cop, yeah.
A former cop.
Former cop. Yeah, and she had been a cop in Idaho. She was mixed race, I think. She was like half black, maybe. It just...
cab.
Yeah. Wow.
That's a lot of fancy excuses over there, Alex.
Okay, I'm just saying it was a little less of a cop vibe, but then she did have a gun. That was the
So that was a lot of a cop vibe.
More of a cop
More
vibe.
of a cop vibe.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
I met her on the apps. Yay!
So segueing back into the apps.
Yeah.
Where were we?
It is great. You can just put ACAB in your dating app profile, and then that's like the one constant I feel like in your dating app profile is that it has said ACAB the entire time.
Every single profile I've had has said ACAB. What's funny about that is how much it actually spurs those, like, let me just play devil's advocate asshats to send me messages like, but what about, don't you think cops need therapy too? I'm like, they definitely need therapy. Also, I don't want to fucking date them. Also, quit your job.
Mine says ACAB too, but it means all children are bastards in my case.
Many things can be true at once.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, all cops were once children. We know that for sure.
Point.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Really good point.
Yeah.
Where were we? We were talking about dating app profiles and some of the amazing cliches that show up in them. Right? Do you wanna just share some of your favorites?
Yeah. So I was thinking about how, like, where did I start? And thinking that everyone was interesting and that everyone would think I was interesting. And where am I now? I think more in a place of struggling to not feel the exact opposite, that everyone, including myself, is very predictable. And I don't want to stay there. I hope that's not like my final conclusion about dating apps, but I do think that there is a kind of like natural arc towards disillusionment here. Because, you're on there for 2.5 years or however long we've been on there, and you just like, you notice the cliches, you notice like the same patterns emerge, the same sort of types over and over. And I say this full well knowing that I am a type, right?
Yeah.
But some of the cliches that I was thinking about that are all over the dating apps, here for a good time, not for a long time. You want to read the next one?
Casually looking for something serious.
Just a country girl at heart.
That one's my favorite. I know my worth.
I love to laugh.
If you want to know, just ask. I'm an open book.
I'm looking for meaningful connections and hot sex.
And then there's always a lot of talk about how much people like sarcasm, banter,
dad jokes,
puns. Yeah. Which are, I don't know. I don't want to sound like we're, what's the word? Cynical.
Better than everybody?
Yeah. Yes. I was going to say.
A couple assholes acting like they're better than everyone?
Yeah. What's the word where you hate everybody?
Misanthropes?
Misanthropes, yeah. But maybe you spending enough time on dating apps will kind of make you a misanthrope.
That's what I would say is we are not misanthropes. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
We are people who love people, and like that is indicated in every corner of our lives. I think my heaviest critique of the apps is that that's a space where I feel like a misanthrope. It's probably one space in my life where I feel that way.
Right, because it's like this sort of like repeated presentation, like sort of shallow presentation of like people's attempts to make themselves seem appealing and like individual. And then like when you multiply that by 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, however many people you've like swiped on at this point, it starts to...
You realize no one's a special snowflake.
Yeah.
We're just big piles of slushy, kind of dirty, gritty snow that has melted a little bit and then frozen over a couple of times.
All right, cut her mic. Wow. Yeah, but that's like why those cliches are cliches, I guess, is just because it's the kinds of things that people say to try to, I don't know, I guess like the human experience is not so varied that when, millions of people try to sum themselves up, they don't land on the exact same phrases over and over again. It's not like there's anything wrong with those phrases necessarily.
I've had I'm sure I've had versions of those in different versions of my profiles too. I'm not better than any of this, which is what makes it so awful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I feel like now, there's something kind of existentially interesting about this to me. In other areas of my work, like as a therapist or as a journalist, as a writer, like as a person in the world, commonality, like the ways that we kind of like show up in theme or archetypes again and again, I find that really inspirational and interesting. I don't see that as inherently depressing or discouraging. It's interesting to me that like in dating specifically, it feels that way, or like in, you know, the way it shows up on the apps, it feels that way.
You're saying that people feel like stereotypes in that context, but they aren't actually in real life?
I think what I'm saying is, you know, like as a therapist, as a journalist, as a writer, the idea that like we all are kind of familiar archetypes or variations on a theme, or that like we don't have to be like super unique and special in a siloed way. I like the ways that we're similar or the same things might show up for human beings, right? Like that's kind of the material of a lot of my work. And so I'm curious about myself, why it is that showing up in dating feels so depressing.
Yeah.
By contrast, you know?
I don't know if I have an answer to that. What do you think, Jessica?
I don't know, there is one, but...
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it makes me, like, something that often comes up for me with the apps and dating is that it, like, I feel like it puts us in this mindset where you think you can just sort of, like, select from a menu of options and dial up the person that you want to date. And then it's like, oh, wait, just because this person, like, likes the same restaurants and music that I do, they might still be a total asshole, or, like, I just might not like them at all. So it's like there is something mysterious about like chemistry between people, even if we are kind of these like archetypes, right?
Yeah,
even
and it's like
exist.
they're maybe good for narrowing the pool, but they're not good for like that doesn't just because the pool is narrowed doesn't mean like the spark will be there.
Right.
And also maybe like there is something to be said for interacting with people who like maybe wouldn't match up exactly. I mean, I think there's like it's important that you like have the same general interests in terms of what kind of relationship you want. That's probably like the number one thing. But like beyond that, you know, you don't want to be dating people who are just like you or people who are like, you know, interested in the exact same things as you necessarily. Especially
now you sound like one of those guys who's telling me that I should try dating a cop.
You might learn something, Sarah. Open your mind.
I mean, I've thought about that one a lot because
there's
I
only a
seem
50% chance that he'll domestically abuse you later.
Whoa.
Oh boy.
Damn.
Sorry.
Wow.
We'll include the link to that statistic in the show notes.
It is actually true.
Yeah.
But damn. Yeah. Jessica?
No,
actually, please send me that link so the next time that happens, I can just send that link to him.
Totally.
Yeah. I was going to say that I have often, if not always, fallen in love with people whose musical taste I like kind of disagree with, right? Either strongly or a little bit.
You know what? Your ex was right about Depeche Mode, though. I just want to say.
Oh, yeah. I know.
I've come around.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did we? Yeah. Well, that's not the example I would necessarily give of his terrible musical taste. Or just like we didn't align on a lot of like taste things. But I do, you know, I think what is important is like that you have the same values.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you just like think the same things are important.
Yeah.
And that's like a much deeper than your sort of like stylistic choices. Although that's probably like important for some things to align. You can't find all of their aesthetics abhorrent, probably. But a certain percentage, it turns out, you know.
Yeah, so, all right. We're talking about how the apps are miraculous in many ways.
A technological marvel.
A technological marvel.
I believe were my exact words.
That, like so many technological marvels. Oh, that was Malcolm's kindergarten teacher.
Oh.
Cute. She must have been at the protest.
We're having a lot of trouble with focus
I'm
today.
sorry. So we're talking about how the apps are a technological marvel that, like so many technological marvels, take you on an arc of thinking humanity is amazing to, well, thinking that humanity is less amazing.
Pathetic.
The worst?
Yeah.
And I guess, like, inside of that, like, that's kind of inevitable. It's interesting to think about that on a personal level and also kind of the collective. I'm wondering if we can take a step back, though, and talk a little bit about, like, the history of these apps, right? Like, where did they come from? Whose terrible and great idea was this? Like, what is their arc? We've talked a little bit about ours. What is the arc of the apps themselves?
Yeah.
I know you've looked into this a little bit, Alex.
Yeah, I did a
What have you
little
thought
bit
about?
of research and like maybe less about the history, but I think the history is very much like just what communication technology would allow. Like probably, the first thing is porn, and then a very close second is dating apps. Like when there's a new technological advance, the ground is broken by a picture of a lady in her bloomers through that little viewfinder on the boardwalk at Coney Island in 1853 or whatever. My timing is way off there. I did not research that. Just winging that historical fact. But like, so there was like, there was like singles ads, right? That you would just like put an ad in the paper. And that was like a bit, we think when we were kids, like there was like the Stranger, like I Saw Yous and other single ads. And then there was like the video profiles like we were seeing up top when like that technology, VCR technology was like available, and suddenly like that was a thing that a way that you could use to meet people. And of course like matchmaking is like, a thing that goes way back to, who knows how long ago.
The dawn of time.
Yeah, the dawn of time. And then, with the internet, there was new ways to like collect and filter data, and like I feel like the biggest challenge probably is like getting a big enough pool of people like using whatever technology so that you feel like you're actually seeing as many of the options that are out there as possible. So in terms of like what the kind of landscape looks like now, I looked into like the popularity of dating apps, like different dating apps, and they're different ones are popular in different countries, but in the US, Tinder and Bumble and Hinge are the top 3 most downloaded apps. And interestingly, 2 of those 3 are owned by the same company, like the Match.com. What was Match.com is now like the Match Group International, and they own Tinder, Hinge, OkCupid, Plenty of Fish, and 20 other dating apps. So it's like a big, huge conglomerate that has like more than half of the market.
Holy
it's like a $2.4 billion company, and $2.4 billion in revenue every year. And there's 4.5 million people in the US on that combination of apps, which is actually kind of like a surprisingly small number, I thought. I was like a little bit surprised that there weren't more, just given, how many people, there's 350 million people in the US by now. That's like a relatively small percentage of people.
Yeah, that's interesting. You'd probably have to do some parsing of demographics there. Like people who are
like
dating
half
age.
are not dating age, right?
Of like the total population.
What do you mean not dating age?
Well,
how old do you want them to be? You guys? No, yeah, some are kids, some are
kids.
married and monogamous, some are whatever. I mean, there's old people on dating apps.
But still, like not of a generation or demographic to be using them.
Yeah.
That number actually feels pretty big to me.
Yeah. And I guess then the people who are in the quote unquote dating pool are like not always on them. They're like downloading them and deleting them and stuff like that.
It would be interesting to look at like over the course of 10 years, right? How many subscribers
How many
have
people
they
had
had
been on that?
And that would maybe be a better like more reflective number.
But it's definitely a great big business that is
yeah,
like...
that's what I was going to say. That's what that number indicates to me is there's a lot of money to be made here. 4.5 million subscribers to anything equals dollar signs.
Yes, and there are definitely, these are companies that are there to make money. And, when they acquire another company, even if a new app starts as, with some kind of mission, by the time it's bought up by the big conglomerate, it's going to be all about money, right? That mission is going to be gone. Maybe some of the like independent spirit that attracted the user base in the beginning is still going to like be there in terms of the brand, but probably they're just trying to use it to make money. And like the way... I definitely think that there are like probably some perverse incentives there as well that make them not work as well for us. Like it has to be appealing, it has to feel like it's working, but also if it was working, I mean, they say this with like nonprofits, but I feel like with dating apps too, if your dating app's too good, then your users are gonna meet somebody and not be on it, except for non-monogamous ones.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about because I think it's her. Maybe it's her that has the slogan, we want you to be able to delete this app.
Right.
Like, find your match, delete the app. Which, again, speaks to the sort of monogamy as norm baked into a lot of the apps.
That's what Her does?
I think it says
Her
that.
is like a queer women's dating app, right? There's no
it is.
men on it,
I could have that slogan wrong for Her. Certainly one of the ones that I'm on. And I'm on Field, OkCupid, and Her. So I think it's probably that one. Or at least at some point they had that slogan.
How do they make money? This is maybe just a sidebar that we don't need, but is it like, do they sell ads? Do they sell user data? Or is it like that people are paying to participate?
People are paying. I mean, they probably sell user data and make some money that way. I don't think hardly any of them have ads anymore. It's mostly that people are paying for premium features. And they all have like different premium features, whether it's like getting your profile seen more, to more information, getting more information from the other users or obscuring your own information. So there's like premium features where you can like go incognito and not be seen, or you can see people but not have people see you, or you can change the location that you're swiping in and like be looking at people from another, like you can like go global and look at people from another area. Anything that they can possibly come up with to monetize, like as an extra. Yeah. It has to be appealing enough to get on there for free, but then, they want to make you want to like boost your profile. And I think that's where it can get kind of sad, because then the other thing that's going on is that I think most of them, the algorithms are trying to show you appealing people so that you feel like, oh, this is a place where there are attractive people. And so the people with the most popular, like most swiped on profiles, for instance, on Tinder, are going to get seen a ton. And so there's going to be like probably 10% of the users, or even like 5% of the users who have just like thousands of likes. And then the other 95%, their profile is hardly getting seen at all. Right?
Privilege. Privilege.
And then you pay to get seen more. So I think it works out really well for them from a financial perspective, but it's probably pretty demoralizing from like a, individual user perspective in some ways.
Typical.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. So just to make sure that I understand that correctly, the privilege baked into the apps is that folks who are willing to pay more get seen more, and it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle, or...
No,
who
more
are
like
these folks with the millions
people
of likes?
who are hot people get seen more, because if you first go on Tinder, if your experience is seeing a bunch of hot people, you're like, oh, look, these are these hot people that I'm gonna be able to like meet and start a relationship with. But those people are overwhelmed by, you're not gonna match with them because their profile is being seen hundreds or thousands of times more than other people, not to mention that they're objectively just hot.
There seems to be, there's also like kind of a fresh meat thing that happens too. Like they show new people, so like when you first get on there, you're gonna get like a sort of flurry of activity or interaction.
Totally. A great hack is to like delete them for 2 months and then turn them back on, and then everybody the sharks will circle.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and in terms of like, there is a lot of money to be made. So the other big company is Bumble, who the CEO, Whitney Wolfe Herd, is said to be the youngest self-made female billionaire in the world right now. And she started at Tinder. She like worked, basically co-invented Tinder, worked in the lab that the like startup incubator that Match Group had where Tinder was invented. So it's like, you know, Tinder was sort of like a few years ago, like the upstart new app that I feel like the difference is really swiping. Like that's where swiping started, which I think is like kind of a shallower engagement. Like the older apps that you were talking about, Jessica, like there's more data there. There's more like description, and there's more of this idea that like we can really like figure out who you are and you can really see who other people are, but also we're going to use like technology to kind of like connect you more with the right people. And Tinder, I feel like just kind of threw that all out the window and was like, this is more of a meat market. You're just like looking at people and making a snap judgment. You can't even really read
We're going to be the trash heap of the romantic world.
But the trash heap like really paid off and became the most popular. And now there's this like regression to the mean where all of the apps are essentially like a version of Tinder now, pretty much, with like a little spin. And the Bumble spin is that like women message first, which apparently makes it a quote unquote like feminist dating app. That's
interesting.
The idea. I'd be curious like what your experience has been on there, if it feels like more
I have
empowering
never
or something.
been on Bumble.
Oh, you've never been on Bumble?
Because
I thought you were a feminist.
Because I hate messaging people. I was like, well, this is going to be a bad equation for me because I am not motivated enough to message people. So that's not like, it doesn't work for me because I don't like, it's so hard for me to like want to go on the apps and then once I'm there, not to want to immediately close them because the humanity. And then like actually be like, okay, I'm going to talk to someone. I feel like the expectation that I would always message first would likely mean that I would just never open that app, if I'm being honest. What do you think, Jess?
I hated Bumble. I felt like it was also like the most people that were on there were just like very sort of like not people I was interested in.
It's kind of square.
Yeah, very square.
When I almost did a profile and it seemed kind of square.
Yeah, just all like golden retrievers and hiking and et cetera.
It's just mostly golden retrievers hiking.
I mean, I love hiking, but golden retrievers.
I was going to say silent on golden retrievers. Yikes.
Well, and I don't want to like drag the youngest self-made female billionaire, Whitney Wolfe Herd, but like I like read some stuff about her and it's like she's like, you know, the sort of like feminist CEO icon, but then she like recently married Mr. Herd, I can't remember his first name, is like a Texan oil heir.
Did they meet on Bumble?
Probably not.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, stake my not self-made or existent millions on the bet that they did not meet on Bumble.
No, probably not. They probably met on The League, which is like the elitist dating app.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That's what I need
like,
to be on, obviously.
Yeah, you're like an influencer, like we were talking about last time. So you should really be on The League. I think you have to get a special invite, probably from Whitney Wolfe Herd or somebody of that ilk.
All right, Whitney. What's up, girl?
Yeah. If you're listening, and we know you are, get us on The League.
Yeah, isn't it? The League is like brackets, literally, right? Or there was some app that was brackets.
It's brackets, really?
Yeah, and like you would have potential matches.
You're not thinking of the
and you would choose from brackets.
fantasy
I don't know.
football show.
It was a crossover, no.
Whoa,
but there was also Raya. Since you guys are famous podcasters, I think that's the one that famous people are on.
Oh, okay. I think Raya and The League are similar, maybe. Maybe they're both, yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
So like that's all like I think the kind of big picture dating apps, which 90% of the users at least are monogamous people.
Yeah.
And then there's some like kind of more specialized ones that non-monogamous people prefer. We did a little crowdsourced poll on Instagram to find out which apps our listeners thought were the best or most useful for meeting other non-monogamous people.
Yeah.
And Tinder was still among the top vote getters, along with OkCupid. And then there was also some votes for Field, which is a non-monogamy only kind of oriented one. But just to talk about OkCupid for another second, I think the reason that that's popular, I told somebody recently who was new to non-monogamy about like that I used OkCupid, and they were like, that still exists.
Oh, interesting.
Like people, regular people don't use it, I don't think, very much anymore. I think it's like kind of passé, but because it lets you indicate your orientation in terms of monogamy, non-monogamy, open to either, some other stuff. There's a lot of options for like your profile, and then they're only going to match you with people who are non-monogamous or who, are okay with that.
Right.
It makes it a much higher percentage of people that you need to swipe on. Whereas on Tinder, there's no way to do that kind of filtering. So you just have to kind of like dig through and find the people.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I guess Tinder's just everybody's favorite because it's got the most name recognition. There will be the most people there. It feels like it may be like not a particularly cool nightclub, but it's the one that everybody always goes to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think people kind of hate it. Like a lot of people.
I said nightclub.
A discotheque.
A discotheque.
The inevitable discotheque that everyone in town congregates
singles
at.
bar.
Yeah, people just drag like most like women's Tinder profiles. Not most, but many of them are just like, I roll. I'm on Tinder. And then the other thing that I've noticed about it is like a lot of people say, something like, I know this is Tinder, but I'm not just looking for hookups.
Yeah.
Which I think maybe that was like the kind of cliche initially, that it was like, a sort of more meat markety app that I don't think it's like that at all anymore. And I don't know if that was like a moment in time where more people were doing that when it started like 10 years ago or what, but...
I kind of think it was just like when swiping was an innovation, it just like made it sort of inherently a little more shallow than the other stuff that was out there. I think that's how it got its reputation. And then just because it was like better, it was like an app first, not a website first. Like all of the other ones were websites.
And it probably attracted younger demographics as a result too, which probably had something to do with it feeling more like a hookup vibe as well.
Yeah.
I think my favorite app for non-monogamy is actually Field, even though it's so awful in so many ways, which I will get to in a moment.
Let's talk about the good things first, though, about Field, because I do think it's cool that, it's an app that was invented specifically to cater to like non-traditional relationship types and specifically non-monogamy. And it was invented by a Bulgarian couple that were in London and were like trying to meet, people to date non-monogamously. And so like they basically were like, we need a new app for this.
I think that's what I like about it. So, one of the things we've talked about a ton on this podcast, and you and I talk about a lot, Alex, in general, is even when you're dating non-monogamously, the scripts are so entrenched. Like just the scripts of like how you date, especially like if you're dating, like if you're a woman dating men, which, I'm a queer woman who dates men sometimes. It's like you just, when we talk about like those patterns, it's like the first messages always sound the same, and the way you build like flirty tension always sounds the same, and there's like this so fucking boring. I'm sorry, and it depresses me. It's just like I know what this feels like. This is very familiar. I know how this goes, and I think also kind of baked into it sometimes will be that sort of escalatory, not super creative vibe.
Explain what you mean by escalatory, just so like people know.
I
know what you mean. But.
Of course. That you're looking for someone where you're gonna like have enough chemistry or interest in each other that you're gonna get on this like build a relationship ride, and it's gonna be one that like escalates in its intensity and commitment at kind of regular intervals.
Right.
And I think, there's obviously lots of different ways to be non-monogamous. For me, that's just something that I'm very, I think to frame it more positively, non-monogamy is exciting and interesting to me because it's this potential language and tool to build relationships outside of some of those scripts, outside of some of those norms, outside of the escalator. And so I'm always looking for other like-minded people who also want to engage in that kind of experiment with me. And I don't say this like flippantly. I know that it's really complicated and sometimes the scripts are fun, and I think that too. But there's just a way that I kind of want to know out the gate. Are you someone who wants to like play around with what relationships can look like? Who's up for, us making something different, for this sounding or feeling different or not? And I think I like Field because inherently the folks on there are looking for something other than a standard kind of looking relationship.
Right. It is interesting that like it's a narrow user base of people who are looking for virtually anything except for monogamy. Like
right.
It's like it's not like it's specifically for, and I think maybe what you're kind of saying is also, or like what's behind what you're saying is that we are a specific subset of even non-monogamous
sure.
people. Like there's the vast majority of people who just like have probably a sort of default orientation toward monogamy, or like that's what they want. And then they're, I think that's becoming less prevalent as I see on apps more people saying I'm monogamous and like feeling like they need to say it because it's not
specify
assumed.
It's not assumed, yeah.
But then inside of the non-monogamous people, there are like definitely people who are looking to like build a primary partnership or,
or to swing. And,
or to swing, yeah.
Or have different orientations inside non-monogamy.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like, so us being, people who already have a primary partnership and are like looking for other relationships outside of that are probably not going to like escalate beyond a certain point or, are on some less escalatory. It's like more of a moving sidewalk kind of.
Yeah. It's like a moving sidewalk that is really slow and needs frequent repairs.
Right. And the destination is an airport terminal where...
I told you that I have really interesting ideas for dates.
Wow. Yeah. So anyway, but you could see how that would, I guess I'm saying I can see how the escalator script shows up even in those apps too, because that is what some people want. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's even like kind of instinctual in some ways.
And to be fair, I'm not judging those folks. I'm still interested in having conversations with those folks. I'm interested in people who want to have conversations about what relationships can be.
Yeah.
Instead of folks where they're not as interested in that, or there's more just like the air we breathe, the water we swim in. Feel.
And I do think that no matter what happens, no matter how intentional you try to be with like the people that you're dating or, where you're looking for people to date, it's very common for the destination to like to like override the journey. Like it's so hard to like keep yourself grounded in what I'm trying to do is like have XYZ experience or build XYZ relationship. But we're like conditioned to be so end goal oriented that, it's easy to just like forget like what was even the point in the first place.
Yeah. And you were talking about gamification with apps. I think there's like a kind of gamification that happens with dating too. And I don't know what came first or how the apps might influence that or how the scripts of monogamy might, but that's also a feeling that just, I don't always love this idea that you're like trying to win somehow at dating, or trying to win at this like interaction or relationship. And I just I don't even understand what we're winning. I just feel like the center doesn't hold for me very quickly. And sometimes the apps just feel like that.
Right.
Where people are like, there's almost something kind of like competitive or more competitive than collaborative in the spirit of it somehow. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else but me. But.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Well, and it kind of, I don't know if we're ready to go here yet, but it makes me think about profiles. And I have a funny story, which is that I was like, well, I don't know. You decide if it's funny or not. But
funny / tear-jerking story.
No, just so I was like first on the apps from like 2007 to 2011, and then I was off them for like 5 years, and then I went back on, and it's like really alarming. It was really alarming that like, so OkCupid specifically, I had deleted the app or whatever, but I guess I didn't like delete my account, or I don't know, they had saved it. So I just like logged back in and then was confronted with like the profile that I had written about myself, 5 years before when I was a completely different person.
Yeah.
And that was just like horrifying and like, and it half felt like very true and it half felt like, oh my God, I would never.
What specifics do you remember about
Yeah,
that?
what was
God, I
horrifying about
can't. I do remember. I think that I kept a copy of it. I should find it. If I find it, maybe we'll post it or something like that. But I really can't. I mean, I can't remember now anything about what any of my dating profiles have said. I suppose when I got married, I just deleted it all from my brain.
Yep. I was going to say, or it's an indication of unresolved trauma.
Right. Well, and I remember I remember that about going back on OkCupid. And then I also remember logging in and the first sort of rows of a few profiles popped up. Again, we're still on the website here. So I could see I don't know, a dozen profiles. And I remember being like, oh my God, that guy. There were familiar faces, even though it had, it had been 5 years.
5 years? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and not necessarily people that I had even matched with or gone on dates with or whatever, but it was just OkCupid thought we were a really high match,
Oh.
And yeah, and they still had the same picture up 5 years later.
That's very interesting.
It was weird.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So profiles. Let's talk about them.
Well, before we talk about our profiles, because,
They're amazing.
they're amazing. They started off perfect, and they've just been getting more perfect.
Yeah, the best profiles on the internet.
They're very stable genius profiles.
They're so hot.
But I wanted to do a little back and forth about Field and how it's also such a ridiculous app. Because I was saying that this was my favorite app, and so one of my friends who's non-monogamous and queer was like, all right, you just keep saying this, I'm going to go on it. And then last night at 11:30, a text message comes through from her, and she's like, oh my God, I just got on Field, and I can't even, Sarah, this is too much. And before,
what didn't you like about it?
Well, before I could even open to respond, she was like, I mean, how are all of these people into Shibari? That doesn't even make any sense.
What
is
Shibari?
Shibari is, I'm no expert, but based on my time on Field, I have come to learn that it's a kind of
I believe it's a Japanese rope play.
erotic Japanese rope play.
Erotic Japanese rope play. Yeah.
I'm thinking, and it does seem to be a heavy trend on Field right now.
Yeah.
Heavy. And I'm just like, wow, this is, somebody's really making money on the Shibari workshops in Seattle.
Yeah. Well, and there's
Big money.
merch. You have to get special Shibari ropes and stuff like that. You're not using any ass rope.
Not just
in
any
the hardware
rope.
store.
Yeah, I actually also know this because of my work with the non-monogamous community as a therapist too. So I know a little bit about that through that.
So a lot of people are into Shibari. What else was her?
And I was like, yeah, I know Field has a little bit of that. It can feel a little corny in the whole we're sexy sexual people out here doing sexy sexual things, It has a bit of that corny vibe sometimes. And so I was joking. I was like, yes, my Libra moon is very offended by the aesthetics of Field. And then I was like, ... And that's what the app Her sounds like. So they all definitely have a vibe, you know, and they have a feeling.
Right.
And a kind of aesthetic to them. For sure.
I really also Field is very technically dysfunctional. It just crashes all the time and it never really works well. And I feel that's just adds to the whole vibe that it's
Mystique.
It's this great idea that's sort of poorly executed.
Now I'm just imagining that it's all being run through this Bulgarian couple's apartment in London, and it's just constantly crashing, and they're trying to fix
There's just wires everywhere coming out and smoke coming out of the servers and stuff. I think it's actually pretty big now. And actually, when I looked at the stats, so Bumble, Tinder are kind of number 1 and number 2, and switching back and forth, and then Hinge, and then OkCupid is number 4, and Field is number 6 for most downloads. So I think it's really on trend. There's only data available for Android users, not for iPhone users. And we are weirdos, so probably most Android users are non-monogamous or something. I think Apple just doesn't release the data for app downloads in the same way that Android, Google Play Store does or whatever. But anyway, it is a very popular app. There are a lot of people on there, and I think it's a pretty big operation, but I don't think it's been sold. So it hasn't sold out yet. It's still owned by those Bulgarians, and it was first the husband was the CEO, and now the wife is the CEO, and I'm sure there's terrible things about them that you could find out if you dug them up, but they seemed cool to me.
Yeah, but we digress because
Yeah.
we are embarrassed to share with people our actual profiles. What did they look like on day one? What did they look like a year in? What do they look like now?
Yeah, and like how does one create a perfect non-monogamous online dating profile? We're gonna tell you in 10 easy steps. No, we're not. We're gonna tell you what not to do. Yeah, I think when we first got onto dating apps, I mean, I was just like I said up top, like so excited that like this was like a thing to do, but then like that thing that I could do, and then like immediately terror set in and like, oh, I need to like figure out how to describe myself in, you know, whatever on Tinder. It's like very few characters. I can't remember what the character count is, but it's not very much. I was always like in my early profiles, I was always just like up against the character count, like trying to like fit all of this really important information about me. That was like, I think in retrospect, I was really had a mindset that I was going to try to appeal to like everybody, you know?
Yeah.
So I was just like,
Me too.
I'll just say all of this stuff, say many things that will somehow all allow me to appeal to many people.
Right.
All of which was under the complete delusion that anybody was actually reading the text in your profile too, which I don't think
My
happens
profiles
very
now
much.
are like 100 words long, and I
Yeah.
still go on dates with people where they're like, wait, what do you do again? And I'm like, my profile is 2 sentences
Yeah.
long, and it says what I do.
Yeah.
One of those sentences.
Yeah. They didn't read it.
No.
They just looked at the pictures.
Yes.
What about you? What were what was your first dating profile like after when we got on them after everybody else had been using them for 20 plus years?
Right. I think mine, like I was saying earlier, I'm like, I'm so interested in you, and I'm so interesting, and I'm up for anything, literally anything. Let's do it. Let's do it together. And then, no.
Yeah, so
I didn't
again,
want to do any of it.
Shooting for mass appeal.
He was shooting for mass appeal
Yeah.
and mass appeal and hyper enthusiasm.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and then I think there's also like a lot of, I think I did a lot of refining of mine early on. Like if I like didn't feel like I was being successful, then I would be like, maybe I just need to change what this says to something different. And like, you know, the other like kind of shitty thing about dating apps is like, it's a black box, like what other people are thinking, obviously, and like what the app algorithm is doing with your profile also is like all very opaque. Like you have no idea, you know, until you, except for with maybe the people that you go on dates with and like actually dig in and talk about your profile. But I've had people like who I was dating, like look at my profile later and be like, why do you have that picture of you? Like, you look shitty. And you're like way better looking than that picture. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
Like, I didn't.
That sounds like a super nice person and a really fun date.
It's great. Yeah. Love you, babe. Yeah. Okay. Maybe those terms were harsher, but like, it's like you don't know how you look to other people, I guess is my point.
I'd say that's true.
Yeah. So, you don't know how shitty you look to other people, even people that like you.
Yikes.
Have fun out there, everyone.
Yeah, and then my second phase of the profile was what I might call the, hi everyone, I just finished polysecure phase. This phase of my profile was just basically a word salad about non-monogamy. It was like, metamors, E&M, C&M, relationship anarchy, hierarchies, limerence, compersion. I am non-monogamous, and I know everything about it, and I'm doing it right. That was the sophomoric phase of my dating profiles, I would say.
Sophomore. Yeah, and you definitely see a lot of profiles like that still, especially on Field. And I feel like that's usually like kind of red flag, or maybe not a red flag, but like it points out that the people are probably kind of new to it, because I think we always do this thing of like wanting to seem more like, if you're an outsider or just becoming an insider to a thing, you want to like really show that off.
You're
and be
overcompensating.
like, you're overcompensating. Yeah,
Sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but.
What did your sophomoric phase look like?
I mean, probably similar. Like, a lot of like, Probably really reactionary too. Like you have some experiences and then you're like, oh, here's what I now know that I don't want. And so I'm going to like put a really fine point on that in my profile, or like, maybe you've learned a little bit about like what you like and what you don't like and learned some like jargon around that. And so, yeah, I probably said a lot of stuff about like, I've like, I'd like learned some high-minded things about consent, so I was probably like virtue signaling with that. And, yeah. And now here we are. And now, like you were saying, I feel like our current profiles are just like very short and direct and sort of like written with the knowledge that they're not actually getting read, and that no like pomp and circumstance is going to actually alter the outcomes that much.
I'm like, here are 3 facts about me. Here is a 1-sentence description of what I'm looking for. Okay, peace sign.
Yeah. Should we torture ourselves and like actually read our profile?
Please.
Okay,
oh my
I have to get my
God.
phone. Okay.
Need to hear. Need to hear.
Oh. I have a lot of profiles.
I would just like to state that personally, when I was on the apps, I always read every word of every profile.
You did not.
I most
Are you
certainly
kidding?
did.
Absolutely believe that.
100%.
I absolutely believe that.
I mean, I would look at people's pictures, but like
you would
reading.
you would see a picture of a person who you were not attracted to and read their whole
Oh,
profile.
no.
Okay.
No. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay. All right.
But anyone
Like,
that
I'm not a psychopath. Come on.
Right,
No, but
Mother
like
Teresa.
anyone that I was like potentially gonna talk to or was in conversation with, or like considering whether or not to match with a person. Sure, the pictures were maybe some, the first gate, but.
Let's see. What do we have here? Okay. Yeah. Here we go.
All right.
Already, I'm like, oh, this is actually like 4 sentences. That's way too long.
How dare you?
Which one are you? Which app are you?
This is on OkCupid.
Okay.
Writer and therapist, lover of stories and curious about pretty much everything. Let's swap books, talk revolution, there's that ACAB, and exchange weird questions. I'm non-monogamous, a mom, and married to a man. I'm looking for people I might see a few times a month for sweet dates and little adventures that offer a break from a life full of caregiving. Let's be vulnerable, have boundaries, and make each other feel fascinating and sexy. LOL, that's what dating a therapist sounds like.
Oh, that's good.
Swipe right.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks, guys.
I'm into it.
Wow, she sounds awesome. Maybe we should be best
You want to
friends.
start a podcast together?
Yeah. Let's see. My OkCupid says, oh boy. Non-monog for 2 years now. I'm from Seattle originally, traveled a bunch, and settled down here again. I was a journalist, so I ask lots of questions, but I'm less broke now. Yay. I'm looking for fun dates, people who want to beat me at tennis and flirting, or just share skills that will help me survive the apocalypse. It goes on and on. This is like, I think, older and longer, and I haven't. And then it says that I'm a feminist, anti-racist, abolitionist who is trying to live up to those words every day.
Oh, I remember when you wrote that. This is more in your sophomoric phase.
Yeah, this is my sophomoric phase. Yeah,
I remember.
I just haven't changed it.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I'm such an idiot.
No, you're wonderful. So sweet. Are you kidding me? You're so sweet.
It's nice to say that stuff. Yeah, but now I think I changed a while ago. I like got kind of fed up or whatever, and just like made it really short. And like I think my Bumble profile says like, let's see, it says, I'm looking for a non-monogamous revolutionary witch with cool tats.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I mean,
She sounds
Who
hot.
is it?
At some point, I was like, "Oh, I should just say what I want and just think of the idealized person who I want to meet." And then I manifested that in words. And
Too bad Sarah's not on Bumble.
Shoot, we would totally match there.
It should say, "I'm just looking for another non-monogamous revolutionary witch with cool tats."
I'm realizing we have got to start our own dating app for everyone out there who's looking for a non-monogamous witch.
It should be called The Coven.
Cool tats. It's called the Coven.
The Coven.
This is another
But it's
$1 million idea.
COVN.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You heard it here first, people.
Mm-hmm. We're accepting seed funding, angel investors.
And people who know how to build apps.
Yes.
So
yeah.
basically,
we'll hire the devs. It's no problem.
No problem.
anyone who has any skills beyond just coming up with a very brief pitch and a name.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are apps. Do you have any other profiles you want to share?
I mean, I have the same. I wrote
It's
that.
the same thing.
I wrote that probably like 4 or 5 months ago and just put it on all 3 that I'm on, and I'm doing so with it, I would say.
I was going to say, who's the communications professional now?
Yeah.
That's consistent branding.
Yeah, you gotta have consistent branding.
Do you? Yeah. Okay. Maybe I should.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you're
I'm A/B testing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Is that what you were going to say? Nerds. Yeah, totally. Yeah. What do we think about all this?
I mean, I think where I'm trying to land on this is that it is like, it's like a wild and sweet endeavor, this like dating and being on dating apps, and like everything. There's all of that humanity, and there's all that potential for being disillusioned, and there's all that feeling that like, oh my God, I'm just like another slushy snow pile among many slushy snow piles. But what I'm trying to cultivate out of this is like, that's what makes it beautiful, right? It's actually fun and interesting because it encompasses all this humanity, because it's constantly pointing out like that we have all of these struggles in common and we're trying to transcend them, and maybe doing that for a brief moment, and then we're just back here in that dating app mud with everybody else. And it may suck, but at least we have a lot of company, which, you know what?
Yeah. Well,
That could be the slogan for Coven. It may suck, but at least we have a lot of company. That'll be our tagline.
Yeah.
This is just getting better and better.
Just acknowledge that it sucks up front. That's a great way to pitch a product. But also maybe every once in a while you like meet one of those corner store people.
Yeah. Oh, there's totally another app that could be called Corner Store. Or
Yeah.
The Stoop.
Yeah. And you can both meet people who you want to date and get like junk food delivered. By people you want to date.
Ooh. I love it.
Then you get to like see the vibes very briefly while they bring you some Cheetos, and then off they go.
Yeah. And at least you get a bag of Cheetos.
Yeah.
Did it?
That's the slogan for that one.
At least you get a bag.
At least you get a bag of Cheetos.
Miranda July invented an app that was kind of like that, where it was like you could sign up to like run a random errand for a random person.
And maybe fall in love?
Well, maybe it didn't have any like official dating
I feel like
intention.
According to
it was just
rom-coms,
weirdo
that's the best way to fall in
stuff.
love.
Yeah.
Is like run into somebody on your bicycle.
Knock some
or-
books out of their arms. Yeah.
Or deliver them,
a bag
Uber
of
Eats.
Cheetos.
Yeah. I do think that there's some like good advice baked in here. Maybe if we want to get advicey for a minute, I think we should talk about like the kind of like core mistakes. But also, I think I did do some research into like advice for writing a non-monogamous dating profile, and this like shows up every once in a while on Reddit threads. Like people will like be like, "Here's my field profile. What do you think of it?" And I feel like the main thing that comes up over and over again, and this is definitely a mistake I made up top, is just putting very clearly what kind of relationship you're looking for, or like that you're non-monogamous, because people don't read that, and you might as well have that conversation. You should have that conversation like really early on.
Right.
And sometimes people are like, should I tell people like on the first date or whatever? No, nobody wants to go on a date with somebody and then find out that they have a completely different relationship orientation than they do.
Totally.
And really you want to just like weed out, and on a sort of mass mainstream app like Tinder, you don't want, it should be the first thing in your bio basically, so that you don't have people basically just like wasting your time, and then they get really frustrated with all the non-monogamous people that they're running into, and then they hate us.
Yeah.
And that's not good for our general brand and reputation.
It isn't. We need brand consistency as non-monogamous too. I would say my big picture mistake was probably trying to turn every connection into something that could or would work. I think just thinking like, oh, if there's something interesting here, or there's some connection here, even if like other vibes are off or the things that we're looking for might be off, like I should work really hard to try and find out how to make it work. That was showed up in the way that I did dating apps and messaging and just dating in general.
Right, because maybe you think going in, if you connect with somebody in that space, it's the same as connecting with somebody out in the real world. So like you should value it in the same way you would. But clearly it's not the same.
It's not the same at all. And so just kind of letting things that just don't feel exciting or aren't interesting or don't have the right vibe or don't line up, just let them pass you by.
Yeah.
And focus energy on things that really feel like there might be something there. I guess the other thing I would say, although I'm kind of two minds about this because I'm not sure that it works out too well for me, for those of us who don't love being on the apps or messaging or talking on the apps a lot, one thing that has relieved some of that anxiety for me is if I do find someone where I think there's a connection or potential for a first date, is I'll say pretty quickly, like, hey, I feel like we have enough material for at least a drink's worth of conversation. I'm not on the apps and chatting very often, but if you're interested in that, let's give it a shot. And I do that earlier rather than later. And I think that, I don't know, for whatever reason, that makes me feel a little bit more in control and a little bit less like I have to hold my nose and like go spend a bunch of time on the apps to ever find anything. Is it getting me dates?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's such a weird thing to do that they probably think that you're going to rob them when they show up.
Like, this is a scam.
I'll be hiding in the bushes.
Yeah.
No, I feel like that's a very common thing to say, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think a lot of people want that. I think a lot of people are afraid to say it, or there's like they're trying to like build trust inside of the dating app context before they want to like actually commit to, meeting in person or even exchanging.
I kind of, and this is like, I'll leave this to the listeners, like, tell us what you think about this. Maybe this is just my experience. Maybe it's not connected at all. I do kind of get the sense that maybe dudes don't like that very much. That like, I feel like dudes are always like, I like assertive women who know what they want or make the first move or whatever. But I feel like I've had
they don't
less
actually.
success with saying to a dude, and they'll be like messaging a ton. And I'm like, I can't read like 2 feet of messages on the apps, but it seems like we have a lot in common. Why don't you text me and we could go get a drink? And I feel like very rarely do the dudes do that.
Interesting.
And it's more like most of the dates I go on, it requires that the dude asks me out.
Right. Maybe a feature of the Coven app should be that your connections just disappear after like a week or something like that. So you have to have decided that you want to exchange numbers or like actually.
I love that. Like build in that kind of urgency a little bit. Yeah. I like
or
that.
even have a character limit. Like you can exchange 5,000 characters.
Ooh, that's so smart. I
like
love
the
these
copy
ideas.
editors are just going to slay. On
Yeah.
Coven. Yeah.
Right, because there's just like so much energy that I have for any one connection to see where it might go to, and otherwise it's just like I'll lose patience or I'll just like not go on there for like a week and a half and then kind of the thread is disappeared. So
That's great. You're like the next Whitney Wolford.
The next self-made millionaire.
Yeah.
Where is my oil baron husband? Where is he?
He's really on field.
He might be on field.
He's already married to somebody else. But yeah, I think for me, in terms of like mistakes early on, like I was saying, but like to just dig a little deeper on it, like their apps are designed to be sort of like to play on your, sort of basest instincts and impulses, and so they can kind of like turn into a game, or it can feel like a game. And I definitely like can easily still get lost in that game and like the rewards of like getting matches and stuff like that. And that actually has nothing to do with like meeting people who you like or who you connect with. But it can be very, like not even saying that it's necessarily like hurtful to other people, but it's like hurtful to yourself to like have a bunch of your feeling of self-worth from like day to day and hour to hour be tied up in what's happening on a dating app.
And
like,
what a bunch of strangers think about you.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately who all of these people are.
Yeah.
They're just random strangers.
So it's definitely like, I wouldn't, if I had it to do it again, I would try not to do that to myself.
Yeah.
Because it can be fun, but it also can be like a bummer, and what's really happening in the real world and your actual existence is not it's not a reflection of that.
Yeah. I think that all of your photos on all of your profiles are super cute, just for the record. To whatever person said that your profile photos don't reflect how cute you are in real life.
Shots fired. Well, that's because I deleted the bad ones.
Oh.
No. Yeah. Well.
The apps.
See you on the apps.
See you on the apps, everybody. You know where to find me. I've only said it like 15 times.
You're gonna have to swipe for a long time before you find us, though, really. Get out there. You better start now. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to Mistakes Were Made. If you heard anything on this pod, if you have anything to say about what we said, because I feel like more than any other episode in the past, we probably said more wrong shit on this one, or like shit that other people aren't going to agree with. So I want to hear about it. Definitely. We also I think erased a bunch of just skipped over a bunch of stuff about how apps were invented, and we just passed over how I think Grindr kind of the queers on Grindr actually invented how a lot of this shit works.
Right.
And
also
paved the way yet again.
The queer app experience, which is, I think, distinct, different, and definitely an experience of its own. That's probably its own episode.
Yeah, and other pieces of advice that you think are good for other listeners, we'd love to hear them. You can find us on Instagram at MistakesCast, and we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode.
See y'all then. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.